We're back on Morning Line. Dr. Friday Burke is with us, financial consultant and the like. Well, tell folks where you're at.
Brentwood, Tennessee.
Okay. And you prepare taxes. You're not someone
I'm an EA,
you're
so
not
I'm
an
enrolled
investment
agent.
counselor. You are a
EA. I'm an enrolled agent, licensed by the IRS.
You do taxes. You know, and with regard to that, I know you do this, and you know, she's asking this where you're coming from. I guess they would technically be your competition, but we all at one time or another maybe have used at-home tax prep services.
Sure.
You know, TurboTax, H&R Block, etc. I've used them in the past, and I've found sometimes it's worked out great. Sometimes I was less than satisfied, but that's true of anything. What's your thought on that for folks?
I think if you've got a simple tax return, you shouldn't be paying $150 to have me do your tax return. You know, nothing wrong with it, but you know, when I consider a simple return, is probably not a W-2. You know, I mean, if you have a single W-2, I've sent more than one child of a client to the free because they make less than $65,000. Why are you paying anyone? Learn how taxes work. So yeah, I think if your tax return is a couple W-2s, sure. If you've got rental properties or small business or, you know, K-1s and you have no idea what you're doing, then I think you need to at least have someone explain it to you so you do. You don't want to be guessing at the answers. That's the problem. If they're asking you something and you're like, I think this is right, then maybe you need a second opinion, because you should either know the answer or not know the answer. That's the biggest thing.
You know my son Huey, and he called a couple of weeks ago and he goes, got my W-2. You know, he's been working, you know, as he goes to college, he's been working at Taco Bell. And he's done okay. And he's very excited. And he calls and goes, Mom, how do I find
Exactly.
And she just sent him the link, just like you said, on his own. He sent this, and he's going to get like an $800 refund, which has just got him dancing in the streets.
Absolutely.
But he did it himself, and there's no reason he would need someone like you to do that.
No, and I think it's actually smart. We need to know how much money's coming out of our paychecks. We need to know how much money is being paid out, because a lot of times I have people they've never gotten their stubs. They don't look at the pay stubs. And I'm like, didn't you notice no federal was coming out all this time? Well, no, because the money's direct deposited. They didn't bother looking at the pay stub. And nowadays we're very technical, right? And then the tax time comes and I say you owe money because your second job did not withhold any money, and you're sitting there going, wait, why didn't they withhold it? Well, A, it's not really the employer's fault. You filed yourself as married in 4 or whatever. But 2, you need to be confirming that. If you don't see money coming out for federal withholdings, you need to be making sure it's happening.
That's great. And I'm really glad you mentioned this. All right, I work at News Channel 5. We're part of the Scripps Network. It's a huge company. And actually, all my life, I've worked for someone else. I've never been self-employed like you, which is a wonderful thing. But I love my bosses. But I don't look at what you just said. I don't look at my stuff. I don't even see my stuff. It's direct deposit now, and it goes. But it's always, that's handled by corporate here. So maybe I should look at it more, but where should people, or how should people decide, depending on where they work? You know what? You better play it safe. Look, I'm telling you right now, I probably should look at it, but I can tell you I trust Scripps. I've never been messed up by it, and I'm not probably going to do it anytime soon.
Well, again, Scripps is probably doing it correctly. When you should do it is if the first year you sit down on your tax return and you owe money. If you're a W-2 person, you should never owe money, okay? I mean, I mean, at least with a self-employed, our money goes like this, and we don't always estimate properly. But so you would go in there at the time I did your taxes, I turn around and say, hey, you need $50 more a month coming out of your check. You would go to Scripps, and they would say, here, do a W-4, add an additional 50, and that's all there is to it. Scripps would do their job, so it's your job to make sure you're claiming the right numbers. And that's what I'm just trying to say, because I know a lot of people are like, my employer didn't do it right. Your employer did what the tax law required. It's your job to make sure those numbers are correct.
No, and you're right about that, and that's happened to me before, where we've owed more because we had to readjust. The perfect tax return is one that comes up 0, right? Or
even if you owe $500 or less.
Yeah, $500 or less, or maybe you get
a small refund.
A small refund, but very close. How close have you gotten a client to 0?
$2.
That's impressive. Think about it. Now, a lot of people, it's strange to me that a lot of folks don't realize it. And I think for people, they're like, oh, I like getting that return at the end of the year.
They do.
And I understand the thinking of that, the sudden windfall, you didn't know it was there, so you lived without it. But the truth is, if you do it right, that money is spread out throughout the year, and you get that money a lot earlier to spend than later. You just don't get a lump sum. And so for some people, that if they're not good at managing their money, that forces them to wait till the end, and then they get that nice chunk.
Yes, but if you actually have credit card debt or something else, now you're paying interest on money the government's not paying you interest on. I know. Doesn't make sense to me.
So the idea is, get with someone, get it as close as you can.
Exactly.
If you owe a lot, start holding out, especially if you're self-employed, right?
Well,
my wife is self-employed, and so as a result, we try to pay quarterly.
Absolutely.
Some money in there so that at the end of the year, you just don't put it off and you go, how much do we owe?
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
And that's what I say. And if we overpay in the self-employed, remember our first estimate is due the same time that our tax returns are usually due. So we can just roll it over if we overpay a little bit to the first quarter. But all in all, yeah, we like to break even in the perfect world.
I'm not sure. Wanda asks another question. Does the health reform exchanges recoup subsidies from their income tax? Does that make sense to you?
So if you paid in, let's say you told the health exchange that you were making $30,000 and you paid based on that throughout the year, but you only made $20,000 in that year, you will get a credit back.
Okay. Okay.
I'm assuming that's what she's asking.
Yeah, that good. Thank you. Just in our remaining moments then, so things have just kicked off. I always like ending with you, just the 2 or 3 top tips you say for folks that, are just filing now, whether they're going to somewhere or what, but what is it you need to have to make sure you do it right, you don't get audited? Right.
So for all of you that tuned in now versus the beginning of the show, I want to reiterate there are 2 letters the IRS will be sending out. One for the child tax credit, that's a 6419. One for the stimulus payment or the recovery tax credit, they call it a 6475. Very important, guys, because if you don't have those letters, the tax person isn't going to know if it's truly how much money you received or not. So we're playing on the safe side this time because last year we ended up with a lot of problems. I'm not going to give you any of the credits, which means amended returns, which means a headache. So make sure you have those. Make sure you have all your W-2s, 1099s. If you had any kind of unemployment benefits, get all those forms together. Don't rush to complete your tax return because you want to get the money back. And then you find out that you forgot something. Now you've just delayed the whole process. The IRS is now trying to set penalties and interest because they refunded money that you weren't entitled to. It just makes life a lot harder, and no one wants to hear. Perfect world, you never hear from the IRS. You file your taxes, they never get back with you. That is a wonderful place.
And again, April 18th will be the deadline this time.
April 18th is our deadline.
There have been extensions right there.
The last few years have just been a challenge.
But now, just so you know, it's back to April and 18th. You have to have it in there. People that maybe need an extension, when do they have to apply for that?
Again, on April 18th, we have to apply, and that will give us 6 months.
6 months. But
October
you are
15th.
paying interest on that extension. You just don't get penalized.
Right. Paperwork is extended. Money is not. So if you owe money, and the reason you're extending it because you owe money, well, you're not really achieving anything. The only thing is the IRS does not know you owe the money until October. You're going to get hit with all the penalties and interest that you were going to have to pay in the first place.
Well, you do a good job. That's all I'm going to say.
This.
I appreciate you do. It's interesting. You love, like when you were in grade school and they said, okay, what do you want to do? I love taxes.
I want to be an accountant.
Well, you've got a head for numbers, all right? Is that what it comes down to?
It is, and I inherited that, thank goodness. So numbers make sense. People don't always make sense, Nick.
Yeah.
Numbers make sense.
Numbers do. It's pretty much straightforward, and you make sense. Thanks for coming on today.
No problem.
It was great seeing you.
Thank you.
We'll do it again for sure as we walk our way up toward April, okay?
No problem.
Take care of yourself.
Thanks.
Take a break. I'll be back with a programming note right after this. Stay with us.